What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Today, I'm going to be doing an instructional solo playthrough. What is that? Well, I'm going to tell you what you need and show you how to run a solo game of a specific game, this time being Savage Worlds. So, let's go see what you need. First things first, we're going to need a table. Well, done. To play any RPG, we're going to need some books, and for this particular session, I'm going to be using the Savage Worlds core rules as well as the Suede Fantasy Companion. Let's get those. All right, well, that worked. We're going to need some dice. So for Savage Worlds, those are primarily going to be D4 through D12. That would be a 4-sided die, a 6-sided die, an 8-sided die, a 10-sided die, and a 12-sided die, but you will occasionally use a 20-sided die for tables. You're going to want a different colored 6-sided die to use as your wild die. There we go. We've got those. Easy enough. But also with Savage Worlds, we're going to need some playing cards. Standard bicycle, or as in this case, Maverick playing cards will work for this purpose. Those are going to be used for initiative primarily, but also in the game I'm going to be playing today, I'm going to use those for some random encounters as well. Beyond that, it is also very helpful to have some minis or tokens to use to represent the monsters on the board, because spatial placement is very important in Savage Worlds. So let's do that now. So you may be under the false impression that miniatures have to be expensive. Not true at all. All of these white standees are actually miniatures that I created myself. I went online, I used an image, I put it onto a background in Word, I made a shape, I cut it out, and I put a little bit of tape or glue on these, and they're ready to go. So total investment in most of these minis is less than $1. The miniatures in the middle are actually from Hero Forge. I use those for the player characters or main NPCs, just to give a distinction between the two. But my point is, you don't have to spend a ton of money to have some nice looking miniatures. But what good are miniatures without a little bit of terrain? Well, let's go ahead and do that now. While having terrain is nice and it does add to your experience, it doesn't have to be expensive. This terrain is from Battlefield in a Box by Gale Force 9, and it was about 20 bucks for a box. Now, that being said, if you notice something about this, if one were a little bit creative and perhaps a little resourceful, you could easily find some stones to use to cover your desert theme and give it a little bit of a rocky outcropping. So this could actually be free as well. But I realize we're missing something very important for Savage Worlds, and that's bennies. So I need something to represent bennies. Usually those are going to be poker chips or beads. So let's see what I can come up with. All right, there's my bennies. So those poker chips on the right-hand side are going to be used for the heroes to be able to reroll dice, soak wounds, change their place in initiative, among other things. So I've got my dice, I've got my cards, I've got my bennies, I've got some minis, I've got a nice mat, I've got my rules, I've got my terrain. What else do I need? Well, I'm going to need to have a tape measure. There it is. That's right. I do need a tape measure because in Savage Worlds, your spacing is going to be very important. So much so that characters and stat blocks include a movement range that is not in a fictional value associated with the spatial distance between the characters in their fictional world, but rather a real world value in inches, similar to old school Dungeons and Dragons. So I've got all this stuff. I also am going to need an oracle because I'm playing this solo. So I need something that I can ask questions to and that could stand in where the GM would be in a traditional RPG. So let's see if I can come up with an oracle. How much magic is left in my fingers? There we go. A little bit hard to see, but there in the background, I have the one-page Mythic Oracle. If you're thinking about getting into solo gaming, this would be my suggested starting point. There are tons of great options. There's several by Wordmill Games that makes one-page Mythic, and they're all great. But this one is what I have found to be the least intrusive into your experience and allows you to focus more on playing the game and less on playing the Oracle. So I love the one-page Mythic Oracle, and I just put it right there on my screen so it's front and center while I'm playing the game. So there is one more piece of literature that I'm going to be using today, and it is actually free. That's because it is my Savage Sun conversion set for Savage Worlds. This is not for commercial use. It is just a free homebrew product that I have made so that I can play games set in an apocalyptic desert world with lots of mind bullets flying around. So let's see if I can come up with that real quick. In this simple 5-page document, I talk about which setting rules from the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition core rulebook I would use for this type of game. I create some special rules for psionic savants, dehydration, bone and stone weapons, despoiling magic, and I also talk about some custom races that are used, as well as providing some random encounter tables. You might be wondering, well, that's great, but how can I get a copy of this? Well, you can join our Discord because I list all of my free resources on my Discord channel, link in the description. Also, this is a good time to mention, if you are enjoying my content and you'd like to see more of it, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And with that, we're going to get on with the video. We've got all of these things, but we still need some characters. So let's see if we can come up with a couple of characters. All right, so here I have a couple of characters. I have Terclat, the Mantis Man Desert Nomad Warrior, and I have Tark, the half-dwarf escaped gladiator. These two have been roaming the sands together for some time, with Terclat's clan having been destroyed, and with Tark having been a part of a caravan working as a gladiator for a noble. Caravan gets wiped out by a sandstorm, and Tark is able to escape. Terclat has accepted Tark as part of his clan, and they are now their own little fearsome duo. So with solo play experiences, typically I like to get right into the action.
Phrasing?
I don't like to spend a ton of time up front. So what I'm going to do is just immediately go into a random encounter. I'm not going to wait to see if I should have one because I want to start where the action's at. So for that, I'm going to get my Savage Sun conversion and I'm going to draw a card. All right, for my random encounter, I am going to shuffle and I am going to draw a card. Let's see what we get. A Jack of Spades. Well, spades typically aren't good. They are the worst. And I got a Wyvern right off the bat. So it looks like I will not be using one of my home brewed creations from my minis. I'm going to have to find something to be a Wyvern. So let's go see what I can come up with. Not too shabby on short notice. We've got a Wyvern now. But we need to kind of know some context. And Like, why is this wyvern out here and what's going on with the rest of the scene? For that, I'm going to roll on the one-page Mythic Discover Meaning table. I'll roll twice. I'll roll once for action, once for description, and then I'll try to interpret that. If it doesn't mean anything immediately to me, I'll probably roll again and add more to it, continuing to build on those first two rolls. So let's go ahead and roll those dice. So I got a 7 for action, which means break, and then for description, I got a 37, which is healthy. Break, healthy. So to me, that means that the wyvern is wounded, and a wounded animal is always more dangerous. So I think that perhaps Terclat and Tark were roaming the desert looking for opportunities to scavenge what little resources they could find, and just as luck would have it, there's this wounded wyvern, and it is in desperation mode. So Terclat and Tark are going to have to either decide to battle this thing or to try to get away from it. Since it flies, that's probably going to be a little bit harder. So let's go ahead and set up a quick scene. So here's the scene, and this isn't completely random because, part of the fun of doing a solo game session is being able to tell a story. And I knew from the start that I wanted my story to involve a tower. Because in Savage Sun, there is an ancient set of civilizations long lost to the history, and they were covered by the consuming desert.
It was consumed by the desert in a sandstorm which lasted a whole year.
But occasionally, a sandstorm, such as the one that destroyed the caravan that Tark was riding with, will remove the sand enough to reveal something from that older culture. I'd already built this tower to use with my boys for our game of D&D, so we're going to use it again, repurposed, for this game session. But the other thing about a solo session is you want to be surprised. You don't want to know what's going to happen. So while I'm going to use this tower, I don't know what's in it. I'm going to randomly generate that as we go, and that'll be the contents of our session. What we're going to say for right now, the wounded wyvern is standing in front of the tower, licking its wounds, blocking our way into what would be probably a veritable hoard of resources that we could use, if nothing else, at least a little respite from the hot desert sun. So one way or another, we're going to have to get in there, especially because Tark is both arrogant and heroic, and Terclat is bloodthirsty and curious. So with those different hindrances from a role-playing standpoint, it makes a lot of sense that these guys would be willing to risk it all because, number one, Tark doesn't think it's a risk because he thinks he's the greatest gladiator on the planet. And for Terclat, he is so focused on the hunt and on finding that next bit of resources for his clan that he is going to do anything to get what he wants. So, with that being the setup, let's give our characters 3 bennies each. We can use these for rerolls, soaking wounds, a number of things, changing our order and initiative, but basically these are resources. One of the tricky aspects of soloing Savage Worlds is figuring out what to do with the bennies for the GM's characters. Typically, a GM is going to start with a pool of bennies for their characters based on the number of players in the game. In this case, since I'm playing 2 characters, I'm going to give him 1 for each character. Now, he's going to have those, but also his wild cards are going to have their own pool of 3 bennies as well, each. So with this case, I need to see if the wyvern is going to be a wild card or an extra. Okay, in the Fantasy Companion, there is no little symbol next to the wyvern, so it is actually an extra. That means that a single wound will typically kill it unless it has any edges that say it won't. Nope. It does have the frenzy edge and the quick edge, so I'm going to need to take a look at see what those do. It's got a toughness of 12 with 2 armor, so that's going to be tough to break through. But it can fly at 12, even though its pace is only 6. It's a size 5. Wyverns are 20 foot long from head to tail. So there may be some size modifiers to the combat. So I'll check that off camera and then come back. Okay, so the Wyvern's Quick allows it to redraw any action cards of 5 or below. So it's probably going to be acting first. And the Wyvern's Frenzy rather will give it an extra fighting die once per turn, so it basically gets an extra attack. Now luckily, since it's not a wild card, it doesn't get a wild die with those attacks. First things first, we are going to draw initiative. We'll draw per character here. Terclat got a 2. We're going to go Tark is getting a 10. And the Wyvern will get a 6, which is actually best case scenario because he can't use his Quick to redraw. Now, technically, he could use a Benny in order to redraw this, but I think that in this case, I've determined from the story that he's wounded, and so he's not thinking straight. He's not going to use all of his resources right up front till he really gets his bearings. I am going to, however, use a Benny from Terclat to redraw his. And he got an ace. That's going to be much better. So Terclat is going to be able to go first, and he's got some options. So he does have a Psionic Savant ability that is going to be from the Savage Sun conversion set that I talked about earlier, but basically it's arcane background gifted, and it gives them 1 random arcane power. So I rolled on my table and I got Burrow. Burrow is kind of neat for a Mantis Man because they can dig in the sand, pop up somewhere else, and be able to surprise enemies. In this case, I don't think I'm going to use that. I think that Terclat is going to try to keep his distance a little bit and use his longbow because he knows that wyverns have deadly poison, and he doesn't want to get nailed by that. He has a low vigor score of only a D6 and doesn't really want to be making poison checks. In a round, a character in Savage Worlds can take 1 action and also move. They could also take a multi-action if they were to want to take a penalty. Now, in Terclat's case, because he's a Mantis Man and he has lots of extra arms, he can actually ignore the first set of multi-action penalties. Typically, it's -2 to all your actions if you take 2 actions, -4 if you take 3 actions. But since Terclat has extra arms, he is going to go ahead and shoot his bow, and I think he's going to attempt to throw his dagger as well. But first he's going to move up a little bit to gain some ground. So still a little bit behind cover here. And let's see what kind of range we've got. So we're still just outside of short range. He's actually in long range for his dagger, but he's in short range for his bow. Terclat's got a D10 in shooting, and then he is also a wild card, so he gets to roll a wild die with that. Let's see what we can get for his bow. A 3 and a 2. We're going to use another Benny. We're going to re-roll that. And a 2 and a 2. Well, that wasn't any better. So he shoots his bow, and apparently he can't hit the broadside of a wyvern. He hits the building behind and breaks a few of his precious bone-tipped arrows. Well, with that out of the way, he's going to try desperately to throw his dagger. Now, he's at long range with his dagger, so it's going to be a -4 to hit. He needs a 4 because in Savage Worlds, you almost always need a 4, especially range, unless they're behind cover or something similar to that, you're going to need a 4. So I'm going to get a d6 for my regular skill, plus a d6 for the wild die. I'm going to throw my dagger. And I got a 1-1. Okay, well, that is a critical failure. Critical failures do not allow you to use bennies to reroll either. So, of particular note, in my setting, in my conversion here for Savage Son, I have a special rule called Bone and Stone, and Bone and Stone weapons will break if you roll a critical failure unless you're willing to spend a Benny to allow them to not break. I'm not going to waste my last Benny on that, so my dagger is just going to break. And that is Terclat's turn, as it were. So we've got Tark, and Tark is going to move over to here, and he could run, which would give him a penalty on all of his other actions, but he'd get to roll a die and randomly move a little bit extra. I think he's going to do that, actually. So he gets an extra 1 inch, and for that, he is now out of cover, and he also gets a -2 on anything else he does this turn. So he doesn't have a lot of options for ranged, and he is not within his reach. So he is going to use his Psionic Savant ability. Again, that is Arcane Background Gifted and randomly assigned power, and he had rolled Mind Link. So he is going to roll his lousy D4 Psionic skill, and he's going to roll his wild die and see what he gets. He needs a 4. Hey, and he got a 4. All right. So that's going to cost him a power point, and effectively what this does is he now has a mind link with Terclat for the next 30 minutes. So now he is going to be able to communicate psionically, telepathically with his partner. Now, other than that, he doesn't really have much that he can do. Oh, you know what? It doesn't work. I forgot. He ran. So that was a -2. So that 4 actually became a 2, which is not successful. So he's just going to waste some power points. I'm not going to worry about it too much here because he's got 15 power points and his Mind Link ability costs 1 at default. He's never going to run out. So I'm not even going to worry about tracking that here. But he does not have the Mind Link after all. Now, the more exciting part of the game, we're going to have this Wyvern attack. So the Wyvern has 2 choices. It can try to eat this shelled mantis man and potentially not get a whole lot of meat out of it, or it could go after this big juicy half dwarf. Let's do that. So he's going to fly right over here and start chomping down. So he's got a D8 for fighting. He is going to roll his D8 to try to bite first. And he got a 6, but Tark's parry is a 7. So he actually misses. He gets an extra attack due to frenzy, and with that, he's going to try to use his deadly stinger to poison Tark to make him slow down and sit still so he can eat him peacefully. Let's roll a d8 on that. And he got a 3, so he failed there as well. Let's go ahead and ask the Oracle, hey, do you think that the Wyvern wants to use one of its 2 bennies in order to re-roll that? I'm going to say this is a 50-50. 32. Yes, he does. So he's going to try to re-roll the stinger attack, and he's looking for a 7. And he got a 4, so we're going to stop there. He is done. Okay, so the cards I've drawn so far are going to stay drawn and go into the discard pile until there's a joker drawn. I'm going to draw for Terclat. He got an 8. Tark got a 2. And the Wyvern got a 4. But he's quick, so he gets to go again. And he got a king. So, yeah, that's what it is. So, probably not worth Tark even wasting a Benny, because he's not going to beat a king very likely. So, we're just going to go with that. So, the Wyvern is going to make a claw attack, or a bite attack rather, on Tark. And he got a 7. So he is hitting with his bite attack. His damage on that is going to be strength plus a d6. And the Wyvern is a d12 plus 2 strength. So he's going to roll a d12 and a d6, and he's going to add 2 to it. So he got a 7. Well, Tark's toughness is a 7. Since the damage matches Tark's toughness, but he didn't get a raise, Tark is going to be shaken, not stirred. Now that's not all though, because the Wyvern has a second frenzy attack, and he's going to use his deadly stinger tail to try to attack Tark as well. And he got an 8. That is what's known as an ace. So we use exploding dice in Savage Worlds. So we're going to roll again, and we got a 1. So he got a 9 to hit versus a parry of 7. It's still not a raise, so it's just a regular hit. However, he hit with his Wyvern's tail, which has a -2 paralyzing poison. It also does his regular damage, so let's roll damage. And he got a 12. A 12 is going to be a raise, and he is already shaken, but that's just going to give him a single wound. So we are going to keep track of some wounds here. So Tark is going to have a wound, but he's going to attempt to soak that wound. Since he is unarmored, and one of the setting rules is unarmored heroes, he's going to get a bonus to his roll too. So he is going to be able to roll a vigor check, and his vigor check is going to be a d8 plus his wild die, and there's a +2 to the roll overall. He used a single Benny to be able to do this. All right, so he got an 8. Needed to get a 4, so he actually got a raise. So he eliminated the wound, and since he eliminated all wounds, that means he is actually not even going to be shaken now. Also, because he didn't take any damage, he doesn't have to worry about the poison. So that was a pretty important roll. That was the Wyvern's turn. Now, let's get to Terclat. Well, Terclat has a bone short sword, and he also has his claws. He's lost his dagger because he broke it, so he's going to come around the backside, and he is going to roll his d8 fighting die plus his d6 wild die and attack the Wyvern. He got a 7, and the Wyvern's parry is a 6, so he hits. So his bone short sword is going to be a d8 strength and a d6 for the weapon. Okay, he got an 8 on his strength roll, so that is an ace. Roll again. It explodes, you know. So he got 15 plus 2. He's going to do 17 damage. And the wyvern's toughness is a 12. So with that being said, Terclat has managed to drive his bone sword through the neck of the wyvern, killing it because it is an extra. It doesn't have any extra wounds, and it is slain. Okay, with the scene over, I'm going to pull back in all the cards. We'll shuffle those before we draw again. There is the GM's Benny token. And we are going to go ahead and make our way cautiously up to the building. And you know, I'm wondering, seems like even though this has been up until pretty recently covered by sand, there's still a chance that there are other occupants that have taken this over. So as I open the door, I want to know, is there another humanoid group that has found refuge in this tower? Yes or no? Let's do 50-50. 90. No, no humanoids. Okay. That doesn't mean it's unoccupied, though, because that'd be a boring story and it wouldn't be much of a game. We open the door. And visually, I know that there is a trap door. Let's see if I can put this so that the camera can see it a little bit better. There's a trap door back here in the corner, and there is a fireplace, and there's a bedroll on the ground, as well as some stairs going up. So I think we want to check the trap door, see if there's anything below. Okay, for our solo game here, I just created a random shape with some tiles. If you got a wet erase board, you could do that. Or you could just set up some barriers with random pencils if you wanted to, and that can be the dimensions of your room. But what I need to know now is, how would I describe this room? And for that, I'm going to roll on the one-page Mythic Oracle, specifically Discover Meaning. I'm going to roll Description twice. So I got a 1, Artificial, and a 10, Clean. Okay? Artificial to me means that it was built, it's not natural. Clean means that it's clean relative to the scene and what's been established, which is it's been buried in the desert and it's just been revealed. So let's go ahead and roll again on descriptor, see if we can come up with some more meaning here. 31 is going to be fragrant. Okay. Now, fragrant doesn't necessarily mean good smell. It could mean bad. I think it's very likely that it's a bad smell. So let's roll. Is it a bad smell, Oracle? And I roll on the table, and very likely 96. Exceptional, no. No, it's absolutely not a bad smell. It is a fantastic smell. Okay, let's roll again on description. See if we can figure out what this thing is. 76, quiet. Oh, that's not good. So it's quiet in here. It's artificial. It's got this great smell to it. I think that's enough for me to want to create an encounter. And I think I'm going to take my random encounter draw table, and I'm going to roll a d10 and pick one of the first 10 creatures on there. I got a 10. So that's going to be a giant lizard. And we're going to roll a d6 to see how many. So there's 4 giant lizards down here. You know what? I rolled 4, but I'm just going to use 2 because they fit better in the space, and also because that's the number of minis that I have for this. So that's one thing with solo play. It's really just your game, so make it what you want. So to explain this situation, this very good smelling, fragrant room that's designed by intelligent hands, and the fact that these giant lizards are in here, I think what this is this was maybe a storage unit for fragrances and oils for rituals, and the lizards have made their way in and they busted several of these ancient jars. So there's that fragrant aroma, and they have kind of come through the door as they hear us coming down the ladder, and now they go, ooh, fresh meat. So, with that said, let's figure out what we're fighting. Okay, giant lizards aren't too bad. So, they are extras again, and they have a pace of 8, so they're a little bit fast. But their parry is only 5, their toughness is only 7. 2 of that's going to be armor. And their damage is going to be their strength, which is a d6 plus a d4. One interesting thing about them is that they are wall walkers. So they can crawl up these walls and whatnot. But since this is a cellar, I don't think that there is too much room for them to get out of my reach. So we're going to roll with that. Their fighting die is a d6. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. But we're going to go ahead and draw some initiative. Not much negotiating with these guys. So an ace for Terclat, 4 for Tark again, and a 4 for the lizards. And we go in reverse alphabetical order of suit name when there's a tie. So clubs are actually last, so these guys will go before Tark. So Terclat is going to get to go first, and he is going to run up and attempt to stab and claw these things. He's got a d8 fighting and a d6 wild die. Guess I should use a different color for the wild die. So it's against a parry of only a 5. So this 5 on the wild die hits. So then Terclat will get to roll his damage with his short sword, bone short sword. So the short sword itself is a d6, his strength is a d8. He rolled a 3. So he did not break toughness. He's going to use his last Benny in order to re-roll that roll. Hopefully he doesn't need it. And he rolls a 4 and a 1, still not good enough. But he gets a second attack. He's got the multi-action ability because he's a Mantis Man, so he gets no penalty for using his second action. And he's going to use his claws on that, which is going to use his athletics, which is a d6. So he's going to have a d6 for athletics and a d6 for his wild die. And he missed. So that is Terclat's turn. Now we have Tark. He can definitely get there. Let's go ahead and double up on this guy. Getting on the broken stones. Tark has a d10 fighting. And he has his wild die. He is using 2 weapons. He has a bone axe and a bone sword. So he is going to take 2 attacks as well. He has ambidextrous and 2-fisted. So he also does not pay a penalty as long as he's using both weapons. So he'll attack with his bone axe first. And he got a 6 on the wild die. So he got an 11 to hit. Needing a 5, that's a raise, so he's going to get an extra d6 of damage for his raise. So with the axe, it's a d8 and a d8. So we're going to say d8 strength and d8 for his axe. And then we are going to say he's got a extra d6 because he got a raise on the to hit. And I am going to roll with the red as his strength. That's important for this because in my conversion, if you get a max roll on the weapon die, if it's a bone weapon, which his is, then it's going to break the weapon. So we've got 8 and 7. It's 15. That's definitely multiple raises. So we are going to say this extra has been slain with the bone sword of Tark. He jabs it in the chest and then pushes off with his feet and lets the body fall limp to the ground. You know what? I went out of order. Tark was supposed to go after the lizards. So what are we going to do? Well, good news is it's just me that's affecting. So we'll go ahead and rewind. We'll let the lizards go, and then we'll apply Tark's impact after that. So the giant lizard behind Tark is going to do his D6 fighting die and try to hit Tark. He failed. The one in front failed. So then Tark kills the giant lizard. All right, no harm, no foul. We're going to go on to the next round. Draw some initiative. 2, queen, and 7 for the bad guys. So we're going to go with Tark first, this time legitimately. And he is going to turn around and he's going to try to finish this guy off. So he's got a D8 to hit, a D6 wild die. I'm sorry, a D10 to hit. He's got 10 fighting and a D6 wild die. He's going to start with his bone axe. He's going to hit with his axe and his sword. The axe, he aces on the to hit with the wild die. So he got a 10. That's his best roll. That's a raise, so he's going to get an extra die of damage. Again, we're going to do the red one as his strength, the green one as his weapon die, and then the bonus damage is the D6. Okay, so this is important. So the strength die is the one that was aced, so it won't break his weapon. So you got 15 plus 6 is 21 plus 5 is 26. So with that, I think that he just lopped this thing's entire head off. And they have slain the 2 giant lizards. As we go through our different scenarios and encounters, this is kind of the give and take. You're going to want to try to go with something that makes sense and that's cool and fun, but also you're going to want to surprise yourself a little bit. And when you want to add that surprise element, you're going to refer back to your oracle. I've done some other videos on the one-page mythic and other oracles, and those might be a good resource for you to learn more about using the oracles themselves. But this video was more just to kind of show you what it looks like to solo with the Savage World system. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and explore one more room, and then we will end the video. So let's roll descriptor twice for the next room. We're going to go through this kind of this broken wall here. So it could be anything. 81, rotten. 76, powerful. Ooh, I like this. 79, reassuring. Okay, I think rotten, powerful, reassuring, coming through this broken wall. I think that we have stumbled into some weird beast's lair that just happened to be located next to this crumbling ancient tower that was revealed by the sandstorm. So we're going to create a layer, and then we are just going to roll on the weird beast table from my conversion. Okay, so when I was throwing this room together, I also was able to discover maybe what the reason for this this whole encounter ended up being, and that's, as I was looking at the tiles I grabbed, there's some discolored water coming down from the cavern walls, and I think that that means that maybe there's a copper vein in here, and metal is extremely scarce, hence all the bone weapons, and would be extremely valuable. This would be like finding a huge oil well today. So I think that this represents a great way to conclude our adventure is in if they can survive whatever it is that's taken up refuge here, then perhaps they can take advantage of this extremely rare find and be able to capitalize on its value and provide themselves with a better opportunity to survive. So let's go ahead and flip a card for a weird beast. And we got a 10, a saber-toothed tiger. Interesting. So maybe this ancient cavern attached to this long hidden tower, for some reason, whatever the purpose of this tower was, it preserved this ancient and forgotten species, and we awoke it from its long slumber when we managed to make our way into its chamber. All right, so I think that as we are approaching this entrance to this cavern and we see the glint of copper perhaps in the walls of the cavern, and we think, wow, this might just be our lucky day, then we hear the low growl of the giant saber-toothed tiger that's been making this his home for who knows how long. And we kind of catch a glimpse of the different bones that adorn the floor. I will say that both of my characters have low light vision, and that's just because I forgot to have them carry torches.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you?
So wouldn't make much of an adventure if they didn't at this point. So if you notice that, it is what it is.
If you don't want to play that way, don't play that way.
But let's go ahead and have them enter into the cavern, and we will flip our cards. Terclat got a queen. Tark, of course, gets a 2. And the saber-toothed tiger gets a 10. He is still not a wild card. He is just an extra. But I think since this is kind of the climax of this adventure, I'm going to make him a wild card. We're going to give him 3 extra bennies as a wild card. And also that means he has 3 wounds. Before his 4th wound, he would be killed. So he also gets a wild die. Let's get to work here. Terclat is going to be very cautious and use his bow to try to wound the creature on its way in. He's got a D10 in shooting and definitely easily within my short range. And he is going to take 2 shots, which is a -2 penalty, but since he is not moving, he is going to get the aim bonus, so it'll kind of wash itself. Now, I did say earlier he ignores the -2 multi-action penalty. I believe that's only if he uses his extra limb. Since he's only got 1 bow, I'm going to say he gets it, but then he is able to overcome it by aiming and not moving. So we're going to roll the first shot with a bow. He got a 5, which is enough to hit. And his damage is 2d6, which 4 is not enough to damage this thing. So then we're going to roll for his second shot. He got a 10, so that aced. So 13. So that will definitely have a raise. No matter how many raises you get, you just get 1 extra die of damage. So we'll get a 3rd die for damage. And we got a 13 plus a ace. So 17. The saber-toothed tiger's toughness is an 8. So 12, 16. So that's 2 raises. So we actually did 2 of the 3 wounds that we need to do to the saber-toothed tiger with that one lucky roll with the bow. But now it is the tiger's turn. He has a pace of 8, which is enough to get up to his prey. He's got a fighting of a D8. And Terclot has a parry of 6. So since this guy is, I have determined, a wild card, not normally, but is in this case, he's going to get a wild card D6. He got a 7, so he hits. He has a D12 strength and a D8 for his claws. They're armor piercing 2, so they ignore 2 of Terclot's toughness. 15 against a 5. So 9, 14. So that's 2 raises. So Terclot is going to have now 2 wounds on him, and he has no bennies to soak those wounds. What's worse, the tiger also has frenzy, so he can make a second attack. And he's going to do that on Terclot, who shot him nearly fatally with his arrow. But we get a 1-1. That is a critical failure, my friends. And critical failures in Savage Worlds cannot be rerolled with a Benny, so this stack of Bennies does no good. So the tiger is kind of at our mercy. I think that maybe he took that final swipe at Terclot thinking he was going to kill him, and Terclot just kind of ducked under it just barely, and it left the tiger open and vulnerable, meaning that Tark is going to get a +2 to his attacks on the tiger this turn. So Tark, D10 fighting die, D6 wild die, and we're going to add 2 to it. We're going to attack first with the bone axe, then with the bone sword. Bone axe. So he got a 10 with the +2 against a parry of 6. So that's going to be a raise. So he's going to have D8 for the weapon, D8 for his strength, D6 for the bonus damage from the raise to hit. Awesome. So his weapon die aced, and in my conversion, that means that it's going to break unless he's willing to spend a Benny to save it. So another ace. I got another ace. 8, 8, 2. So that's 18 on that die. +7 is 25, 26. Yeah, that's more than enough raises to kill this thing, but he is going to try to soak it. So how many damage did this thing take? So 26 against a toughness of 8. So that's 12, 16, 20, 24. So that's 4, 4 wounds that he needs to soak. So his vigor is a D10, and he is a wild card. So, he didn't do it. Did not do it. So, just before the thing was ready to eat Terclot, Tark is able to jam his bone sword through the skull and break it off in the thing's head, and it comes falling to the ground with a sickening thud, leaving the two there to lick their wounds and try to recover while they think about how they are going to capitalize on this amazing find, this copper mine that is now theirs for the taking. And that is how to solo Savage Worlds. As a reminder, if you would like to get a copy of my Savage Son conversion kit, join the Discord. There's a link in the description to the video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe because that helps get my content out to more folks. And with that said, I'll see you next week. This has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.